Hello, and welcome back to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. It's so great to have you here today. We're going to talk about two things, really. One is the importance of community and support, and the other, we're going to get into a great question that was submitted into the Facebook group. Well, there have been a few on this exact topic where we talk about gift certificates and the policies and questions around those, especially when we sell them from our yoga business or we give them at, let's say, a silent auction. There is a difference. But first of all, I want you to just pause for a moment and think about the last time you called a good friend of yours and really appreciated their support, their ideas, and their unconditional love for you as a friend. I know that building community is so important. When someone else gets what you're going through, or they care enough to listen and really hear what you are dealing with, it makes all the difference. And this is a huge reason behind the podcast, but also our Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group. So I wanted to dedicate a podcast episode where we talk about the Facebook group in case you don't know about it and what's happening in there. And we talk about a question that happened in there. And at the end of today's episode, I also want to talk about a related question that a yoga teacher recently shared with me and how I think the answer to the struggles that many of us are facing is in how we form a community or a network of support. So if you are brand new here, let me first dive into that. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And this podcast is being recorded on the land of the Anishinaabe people, the Odawa and Mississauga people, also sometimes called the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario, Canada. Also in the room with me here today, often when I'm recording now, is Blizzard, our dog, and she loves hanging out in the office for podcast days. If you ever want to see Blizzard out running around, I have a highlight in my Instagram stories. Many of you tell me that you love the walks with Blizzard and I, and definitely find me over on Instagram if you haven't already. So what else about me? I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a mom of 3. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a forever student who loves to ask questions. And that's why podcasting is such a good fit, I think, for me. I love that we get to hang out and learn together, even through the tough things in life. And running a yoga business is one of those. This podcast was made for you, the yoga teacher, because I understand how it feels to be out in the real world as a yoga teacher, trying to run a business, trying to make enough income, and trying to also make an impact in the world, a positive one. So this podcast is a place where you can connect to other yoga teachers, ideas, and information. And the main goal is to have a place where you feel supported. Returning listeners, thank you so much for hanging out. Again, it's great to have you back here. Also, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, OfferingTree. I already use and love this software in my own business because it makes everything automatic, from the bookings that I do, payments, Zoom links, reminders, and so much more. And we have a special podcast listener discount code over at offeringtree.com/Shannon. Today's episode is also brought to you by 2 trainings that I have that are focused on yoga for pelvic health. So these are online trainings that I did live in real time, and you can now access the pre-recorded version so you can do it at your own pace. This is all of the information that I've learned over the years as a pelvic health professional and yoga teacher. That really has been my niche, my specialty, what I get curious about, what I, really have helped people with for a long time. So this is all combined into a training for yoga teachers or pelvic health professionals. And this came about because I started to see how yoga and pelvic health are very connected. I used to run a 100-hour prenatal yoga teacher training, and I saw that some Huge information was missing. And I birthed 3 babies and studied anatomy in college and still didn't learn this information. So it was a bit shocking for me. And I realized, wow, this really needs to be out there for yoga teachers. And, pelvic health is for everyone. I remember someone saying well, women have a pelvis, but men don't. I'm sorry, what is holding the spine of a man to the rest of him? Where's the bowl for the pelvic organs? No, we all have a pelvis. We all have a pelvic floor. And so this really is for every one of your students, not just the pregnant ones or the postpartum ones or the people dealing with menopause. So everyone has a pelvis, everyone has a pelvic floor, and this is information that we should all know. So if you want to learn more, there's a 20-hour training, but there's also a 3-hour training. So you decide the investment of time that you can put in, the investment of funds that you can put in. And to find out more about these 2 trainings, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under training. Alrighty, let's dive into today's episode. First, I have a question for you. Are you in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group? If you're not, maybe pause the podcast for a moment, head over to the connectedyogateacher.com website. We'll also link to it in the show notes, and look for the join button on the homepage. That'll send you over to our Facebook group. It's free to join. There are over 12,000 members in there from around the world, yoga teachers from all around the world. And I love that we've built this supportive community in there. So let's say you have a question anytime, day or night, that relates to yoga or running a yoga business. Our members are there to support you because we're all in different time zones. We're all online at different times, and you pop the question in, and chances are that a lot of people will have things to say about that question. One of the top posts this month that our members engaged with a lot in the comments was a really good question about the policies around gift certificates. One of our connected yoga teachers wrote in there, and I got permission to share their words. They wrote, "Last December, I contributed a voucher for a private online therapy session to a silent auction for charity. I put an expiration date of March 15th on it as I was moving, April 1st, and I never heard from anyone. Today, the person with the voucher emails me asking if I will still honor it because they're very interested in my work and because of a certain situation that's been really difficult in their life." And this teacher went on to write, "I have mixed feelings. Part of me wants to hold a firm boundary as the expiry date was clearly written on the voucher. Part of me had misgivings about a 3-month expiration date in the first place and felt that a year would have been more fair had that been possible with my move. I'm also not quite ready yet to offer online sessions as I'm still renovating my space. So I'm trying to decide, do I just say no, which would be fair and honoring my own boundary? Do I offer to charge them half price as a compromise, but tell them that they'll need to wait until I'm ready, which shows some compassion for them and allows for the possibility of them to become a returning client? What would you do? Thanks." And I want to say this is a great question, so thank you so much for submitting it and allowing me to share it here on the podcast. And there were just so many great responses in the thread. So I will link to the entire post. And if you're a member, you can see and you can scroll through. But I also wanted to summarize some of the replies here so that you can listen on the go and think on your own, what would I do? And ultimately, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to ask you to look at your policies around not only gift certificates, but other things in your yoga business. So one teacher replied and said they're no longer doing gift certificates at silent auctions for that exact reason. They also went on to share the wording that they would use in a reply email, and I thought that was so helpful. And that's a lot of the time what our connected yoga teachers will do in the comments, is really help each other out. Another teacher shared thoughts on how to stick to a boundary while also being flexible and finding some type of a compromise within the gift certificate policy. Another teacher spoke about how silent auction prizes have an expiration date. And they also went on to say that none of the silent auction winners went on to be long-term customers in the future for them. One teacher said they would offer a discounted price as a compromise. One teacher said, go ahead with the gift and see if it turns into a new client. Some members were chatting back and forth about, not offering a huge discount, maybe 20% instead of 50%. And another yoga teacher said that they would set a time limit on rebooking something if that was going to happen. And a couple of the yoga teachers highlighted that word of mouth goes a long way and that they would take that into consideration and for sure reply to the email, and kindly, obviously, and also consider honoring it in some way because the person did purchase it and they might possibly talk to other people and it may impact this yoga teacher's business. So I feel like there were so many great ideas shared. And in a moment, I'm going to share with you what the original poster decided to do, because here's the ideal situation. A question gets posted in the group, people share, and then the original poster comes back and says, here's what I decided to do. It's just a great way that we can all sort of learn together. But before we get there, I want to tell you about something else. I want to see if you know that you can create gift cards and discount codes through OfferingTree. I was just looking into this, and I love that you can quickly set this up so that someone can use a code on the gift card when they're booking themselves into a class, a workshop, or a one-on-one session with you. This saves so much time. When you get an email like this poster did in the Facebook group, they got this email from someone who got a gift certificate. And then instead of them going to the website and booking it automatically, you're left in this sort of back and forth with email. And the nice thing about the way OfferingTree is set up is you can have a discount code and it has an expiration date as well. So you would still end up with an email from someone in this case, but it may deter someone if they go to the website and it says like, this is no longer valid, it's expired. That can really clear things up. And the other thing is, if it hasn't expired, they can go right in and book the offering, apply the coupon code, get the discount, pay and set it up, and you're not stuck in that back and forth email with people. I am a big believer in systems that will save you time, and this is one of them. So if you're thinking about setting up with OfferingTree, we have a special podcast listener discount code for you over at OfferingTree.com/Shannon. And if you're already using OfferingTree, check this out. Are you going to do some gift certificates as Christmas gifts this year? You can use the discount code and allow people to book automatically. And like I said, if you're not already using OfferingTree, make sure to use our discount code, OfferingTree.com/Shannon. Okay, let's find out what this original poster shared in the Facebook group. So what I learned from reading through the thread is that it would be so great to really review policies about gift certificates before giving them out at, let's say, a silent auction, or before putting them on your website as an option, or before talking about them, with your students as a gift certificate that they can give as a gift. And this thread gave some really great ideas. And again, like I said, what I really loved is that the teacher who posted the original question shared what they decided. And I think it was beautifully done. And so I want to share what they wrote. So they said, "Thanks everyone for your helpful input. I replied with compassion for their circumstances. I explained the voucher expiry date was due to moving and not knowing when I would have the availability and capacity to take on new clients after that date. I shared that I'm still renovating my space and full up with my existing commitments. I invited them to check back in January, and then I would be happy to offer them a bundling discount, $20 off my standard fee, when I'm ready to take on new clients. I then offered referrals to a few other yoga therapists who may be available sooner." I think this is an amazing way to respond. That really helps them find someone now if they need to. And you've responded with compassion. You've acknowledged what they're dealing with, and there's still a discount. even though they've missed the expiration date? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question, connected yoga teachers. You can still share those in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes. And also, I want to check in and make sure that you know that you can search our Facebook group. Up near the top right of your screen, you should be able to see like a little magnifying glass once you're in the Facebook group. And so I went ahead and searched for gift certificate because I wondered like what previous questions were posted in there. And I came upon a really great thread. I'll also link to it in the show notes. So back in 2019, a yoga teacher asked a question, and it was, I understand that gift certificates cannot expire. At our business, we do a lot of donations to silent auctions and different charity events, and we'll often donate a 5 or 10 class pass in the form of a gift certificate. Would these fall under the same category, or would it be appropriate to put a must be used by policy on the back? And 2 yoga teachers, I'm just going to share 2 of the responses. There were lots of responses in there. One yoga teacher said, in Canada, you can have an expiry on donations, including gift certificates, as well as on sales of service-based packages. So let's say you sell someone a 5 class pass that expires 6 months after the date of purchase. What cannot expire is a gift certificate that someone has bought for you. So I think that's really an important thing to know. Like, what are the rules around gift certificates? Someone else said, I sell gift certificates on and off, and it's true. There's no expiration date, but learn that you can say, please use by date. I usually put a date 3 months out. If they call me later than that, I'll still honor the certificate, and that's working great so far. So I want to ask you, do you have some policies already set in place so that when you get an email, when you get a question, you already know the answer? It makes it a little simpler. I mean, we're learning together here, and we can't think of every policy that we'll have for everything in our business, but we might want to consider some of the policies. So what's your policy when someone misses a class? Let's say they're ill or someone in their family needs their care and support. And let's say they're registered for a yoga series with you. What if they have to miss a class? Do they get a refund? Do they not? Are they clear on that? Are you clear on that? Also, what's your policy for when people are late to class? What do you do? Have you spoken to your students ahead of time before they're late to let them know sort of what the policy is on that? What about refunds? And do you have your policies on your website somewhere? So if you want to give this some more thought and, have a little time to clean up your policies, make sure to have a listen to episode 254 with Erica Kullberg. That's where we talked about 3 legal agreements, and we also talked about your policies in that. Okay, and as I wrap up today, I want to share a question, sort of a response and a question that I got from a yoga teacher who lives in a small rural community in the US. And we were having a back and forth conversation on social media, and we've gotten to know each other over the years. And I had been posting about what's currently happening right now to the people in Gaza, in occupied Palestine, and really my disgust at how the leaders in the US and Canada and other countries are still sending weapons to a country that is harming the land and so many civilians, including so many children. And, we talked about tough conversations last week on the podcast, so go tune into that one if you're like, why is Shannon having these conversations? What does this have to do with yoga? We talked about that last week, and I'll be talking about it again because this is part of yoga. Anyway, this yoga teacher reached out to me in a private message and said, what am I supposed to do? I'm just one person in a small town in the US, and the leaders of my country aren't asking for my opinion. And I've really been sitting with this response for the past few weeks. At first I was just felt like prickly about it, And what I could hear is that she was upset that I was posting about her country as well, really feeling like I shouldn't be picking on the US. And I want to say, to clarify, I am picking on the government and the leaders in the US. I'm not picking on the individual people. I think it's really healthy that we question leaders and government just the same as we question like leaders of a yoga teacher training. This is how things are run. Okay, well, there's always time for reflection and questions. There should be. There needs to be. And accountability too. Now, I also want to clarify that this yoga teacher attended a group with me talking about the harm that was happening to Palestinians. So I knew this yoga teacher was on the same page as me, wanting the harm to Palestinians to stop. And it wasn't until this week when I was out on a walk and I just had this moment of clarity, and I want to try and share that here if I can articulate it. And this often happens when I'm walking outside. I was actually looking at the tiny, fragile blossoms of the aster flowers. I have fallen in love with aster flowers lately. I just think they're amazing. They're the last thing to bloom before the snow happens, and they support so many animals and birds. And they're tiny. They're a super powerful medicinal plant as well. Not necessarily always for humans, but they hold so much medicine for animals. I mean, I don't even know about the medicinal value for humans. Okay, so I got thinking about the aster flowers and how, they're just doing their thing. They're feeding the butterflies. They're feeding the bumblebees. They're feeding different birds, deer, all kinds of things depend on them. And they're not thinking, what can I do? I'm just one tiny flower, and it's going to take so many more to feed the butterflies as they migrate. They just do their work of blooming. They just dig in, literally, as a tiny seed and grow in that one season to bloom, make the difference on the planet, and then produce seeds, And so I felt a tremendous amount of inspiration from this. If you are feeling worn down by watching what's happening in many places of the world where people are being oppressed and harmed, or you're watching the planet really being harmed, if you're speaking up and you're taking yoga off the mat and you're caring for people in your community, and you're feeling worn down and you're feeling reactive like that yoga teacher was, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm only one person. I understand that feeling. I'm wondering if you can think of the aster flowers that are so dainty, beautiful, and yet so vital and strong in what they offer to the planet. So you showing up to teach yoga, holding space for the pain of those in your yoga class, as well as any other work that you do on this earth, that really makes a difference. Even if you're not in a place in your world where you can call up your local politician or find a community group that's supporting oppressed people somewhere, what is the work that you're doing, and is it helping the community in some way? I keep thinking about this. I'm very drawn to growing vegetables and teaching people how to grow vegetables. And in my mind, this is the work that I need to be doing right now. And I know that it will make a tremendous difference, as much as a difference as I can, like that aster flower does, That's the little tiny drop that I can offer. And here on the podcast, we can have these conversations where we're talking about, what is happening. In this week when I'm recording this podcast, so you won't get this for another week. We just watched, if you have been looking at the news in the north of Gaza, if you're following Al Jazeera or journalists who are in Gaza, you will have seen haunting photos that look just like images from the Holocaust that we all studied in school. And we learned about those horrors so that it didn't happen again. And it's important to me to continue to talk about that here on the podcast, not because I'm trying to make you feel bad because you're not doing enough, because I'm saying as a collective, just like the aster flowers, we can make a tremendous difference together. And sometimes that's like jumping in the Facebook group for the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group and saying, I need help with this question. Sometimes it's scrolling through and answering a question and supporting someone else. Okay, I've rambled on long enough now about flowers and yoga and questions and community. I hope this has been helpful. If you want to see the show notes, they're over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/383. And if you want to work with me, make sure you're on my email list, because I have this little, it's going to be very quick and it's going to be quite limited, this offering of me working as a coach for yoga teachers. I used to do this a lot. I have some space open this winter. In the transition, I sold pelvic health professionals, and I am gearing up to open this market garden in the spring, and I have some space, and I'm going to put it out probably in email only, where I'm going to share, like, here's how you can sign up and work with me. If you're feeling like you need someone who you can bounce ideas off of, yes, for sure, use my expertise that I've learned over the years of being a yoga teacher and managing a studio and having a podcast and marketing on social media and through email and, all the things. You can use my brain in that time, but also I love to dig in and find out, like, what are you really here to do? What really lights you up? What's the work that you want to do? And how can I help clarify that? And how can we make a plan for making that possible? And so, yeah. If you're interested, get on my email list for sure. You can also email me, Shannon, at theconnectedyogateacher.com, if you are like, well, I just want to sign up right now and I haven't seen it in your email, Shannon. You can do that. Thank you to our amazing team over here, Suzanne Crunch and Sinead, for all that you do to support the podcast and our community of connected yoga teachers. And thank you, dear listener, for being here. You make this podcast possible. And as usual, I want to leave you with a question. What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?